Yeah.
Nor should it, you know. Like it provides a tempo to your life. It's like you can't depend on having fascinating dreams every single night, because then they'd stop being fascinating.
It would also be exhausting. Sometimes it's like very like strenuous to have big dreams, because then I don't know, for me it's like, because usually it wakes me up, so I'm already like waking up when I don't expect to be waking up, and then you like thinking about it and like trying to digest it all day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next week we have Son of Frankenstein. This isn't good. Hello? Hey! Good. Thank you. Alright, cool. No, that's good, thank you. Cool, have a good one. That actually was a good call.
Who was it?
It was actually Renee from UMF, but she works at Bull Moose.
Oh.
So Renee Claremont, but I got a special order in.
Oh, nice.
But usually nowadays when I get like random Lewiston numbers, it's like, our kitchen's on fire. Like, what should I do? Like, call 911. I'll be there in a minute.
First, call 911. Then I'll come by to help. Anything cool at the Bull Moose?
Yeah, kind of. I have like a list of, you know, a few albums or whatever that are just like long out of print and gone. That like every once in a while I'll just like go on their website and search for them and be like, yep, still don't have them. But there was a Guar studio album that I was able to procure a pre-owned copy of that I've been missing since forever. I've never had it, so.
Wow, new Guar.
I've heard it before, obviously,
of course.
But yeah, Ragnarok. Pretty excited. Pretty excited.
Add it to the collection.
Throw it in.
Some good lines in Dawn of the Dead about stuff.
Yeah.
You got to see all these things we got. I tell you, these things are really great. You got to see this stuff.
I really liked how when they were like, it seemed like none of them were really sure what a mall was when they were like flying up to the mall. They were like, what the hell is that thing? And he's like, I think it's one of those indoor shopping malls. Yeah. Like, it's like weird.
It's the 70s. It was a good time.
Yeah. They were still rad for, you know, for like 20 years.
Or bogus.
Yeah, that's true. So we might not have been quite at rad yet.
George Romero knew they were bogus. George Romero knew they would always be bogus.
I think, you know, that's a very
Ben take, isn't it?
It is, but I agree with you.
That's definitely what the movie's saying, anyway.
Yeah,
and like Francine as the lone voice of reason.
And he kind of called it. Usually, when things like that happen, that opinion feels
old man yells at cloud.
Thank you, exactly. Yeah, and so for like to be 20 years later and then have him be right.
It's like, oh wait, that was actually old man righteously yells at spiritual decline of nation the whole time.
Do suck.
Yeah. Malls, not only do malls suck now, they kind of always sucked. And he called it right at their genesis.
I shouldn't say this because we're streaming, but I had an old man moment. Mm-hmm. So I want to try to tell you about that after we're no longer streaming.
Why not? Why not on stream? Nobody's watching.
but it'll be on YouTube later.
Yeah, whatever. Nobody will watch that either.
Nobody watches that either. No, I said, so how should I say this? I had it was like a triple old man moment where like I said an outdated term without knowing that it was outdated. And then I was like, I'm
trying to figure out which one it was.
No, I know.
Yeah, I was just driving down the street and I yelled tranny at somebody.
Yeah. I didn't know you couldn't say colored anymore. No, so I said a phrase that I guess is outdated, which I did not know.
What was it? Now you know.
I said...
it's okay, you gotta own it.
Well, yeah. Well, no, I referred to somebody as being an ESL, English as a second language. Yeah. And I was corrected with like a we say ELL now.
Fuck that bullshit, though.
So it was like, 1, I say something that's outdated. 2, I get the like, not snippy, because the person that said it is, I really like the person that said it. They were just trying to like inform me, but me being like taken aback, I was like offended for a second, you know. So it felt like this, like,
yeah, of course,
snippy, you know, but it wasn't.
Right.
And then to like even go further, I was like, that's stupid. Like, it's not really. I guess it's not really up to me if it's stupid. I guess I'm not.
It's not up to you. It's not up to anybody. It's not up to nobody. Has this identity politics bullshit. Let me tell you. All right. So
remember, we are streaming.
Yeah, whatever. I own everything I say.
I don't.
The reason there is a good reason to say ELL instead of ESL. You don't know how many languages that kid already knows, right?
Yeah.
ESL is very limited. English as a second language. It's like, how do you know if he knows or she knows this or that or however many languages?
Yeah.
But the idea that it's somehow offensive to say someone is learning English as a second language, but not to call them an English language learner is like, is the most PC bullshit imaginable.
And like in my,
we're here on the Howard Stern Show.
Here on the Howard Stern Show. In my defense, I had apparently a misunderstanding of, I guess, the terminology in general, because I had always just assumed, maybe because I only heard that one abbreviation, I was under the impression that your primary language is your first language and any other language is like a second language. Like French, German, and Polish are all second languages. Like, that's how I just like.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so that's how it like made sense to me. But so I felt really old because like, and it made me feel bad for a minute because I was like, maybe this is like what it's like when old people say colored and everyone gets pissed at them because you're just like, I didn't mean anything by it. That's what we say. And I was just like, shit, that made me feel so old because I was just like, oh, it happened to me. I'm not even 30, and I like it happened to me already. So it was weird, and it was just weird. But yeah, I don't remember how.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't feel guilty about it. Who did you hurt?
No, nobody. And the person that, you know, it wasn't like the person who corrected me didn't.
That wasn't an asshole.
No, they weren't an asshole, and they didn't mean it in like a. They didn't think I was an asshole. They were just trying to help me. They were
trying to help me be a better person.
Trying to help me.
They saw that I was a wrong bad boy. I was a wrong bad boy, and I needed correction very badly.
It was either they were trying to help me be a better person, or they were just trying to help me not get in trouble.
It was a fucking political correctness power trip. It always is. The authoritarians are out of control.
Let me tell you, man, the leftists in this country.
Listen, Curtis, whatever happened to the tolerant left?
You know, Ben.
So much for the tolerant left.
So much for the tolerant left. I have a problem, you know?
Do you? What is it?
I have a problem with... This is so stupid.
Get it off your chest. Get it off your chest, Curtis. It's all going to come out before we start recording.
We have to move the webcam at some point because...
Yeah, it's just you.
No, it's both of us, but the hats are perfectly sitting on top of your head.
No, we should keep it that way.
It's like, it's good.
That's awesome. Why would we want to move the webcam?
Why would we change that?
That's not a problem. What's your problem?
That I think on both sides of the American political spectrum.
Let's get this all out before we start recording.
Let's get this all out.
My wife doesn't need to hear this, all right?
She doesn't want to hear this. I think each side has been, like, growing, you know, further apart.
Absolutely. And I think polarization, it's a real problem. I call it the polarization vortex.
That's a good phrase. That's what I'm going to say now. And I think that it makes it so that now, like, when we have, like, political candidates, it's like they don't even feel like people anymore. They feel like cartoon characters. They're like caricatures.
They're flags.
Yeah. And I just, like, can't really get behind either one. And then I feel like you can't really... You can support an independent one, but, like, just fully acknowledging that, like, they're not going to win. So you're just like, do I keep my pride and vote for the independent? Do I just, suck it up and pick my less favorite of the the two, or do I ignore it? That can't be. That doesn't feel right. I feel like I should be contributing in some way. So that's my problem, Ben.
The best way to contribute to society is to speak truthfully at all times, to accept maximum responsibility for your own actions and for all the suffering around you and for any bad things that happen. Except as much accept as much responsibility as you possibly can for all the evil and suffering in the world, and be unfailingly true. Aim for unfailing truthfulness in your actions and your thoughts and your words. That's the best way that you can make the world better, because then instead of contributing your efforts to a political system that will do nothing to represent you and will actually go against everything that you believe in, if you simply follow that 3-step program, the light that shines from within you will no longer be obstructed and will simply emanate out into the world.
If I start telling the truth, does that mean I have to tell the truth about previous lies I've told? Because that's... If I could maybe start fresh.
Only if it comes up. Yeah, hey, listen, Curtis. You just get born again. That's all it is.
Oh no.
That's all it is. That's literally what you're talking about. That's
answer.
what you're talking about is the thing.
No.
Like when a person comes up and is like, "Oh, how could I ever be righteous before the Creator? I've done so many bad things and told so many lies." Well, that's why Jesus is the way Jesus is a fresh start. When you are born anew in Christ and your past sins hold no power over you.
Ugh.
Yeah. No, but that's the thing, though. You just stumbled into the reason Christianity is structured the way it is. It's just interesting how that always happens.
Always?
Not with you, necessarily. not just with you, I mean.
Sure.
But just in the world in general. You see problems all around you, and when you scratch beneath the surface, you end up finding that, like, oh shit, this value system that has been popular and effective for 2,000 plus years is actually, like, is a thing. It's real. It means something, and it's important. Anyway, I'm glad I'm getting this all out before the podcast.
Me too. I have a good feeling about today's podcast. I was really looking forward to it. And it just,
I hope it goes well.
I hope so too.
You want to do precast?
Oh, we are.
This is precast?
We've been recording for about a minute.
All right, cool.
And we've been streaming for however long we've been streaming for.
Cool. Wait, let's be quiet for a second. Make sure it's not making the popping sound. Good. All right.
I could actually, when it was making the popping sound, I could see it, and now I can't.
Yeah, keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. And hopefully, if it does do it again... I've been creating theories. The first theory is that...
God is real.
Yes. And he was like, Curt, you gotta listen.
Knock, knock, Curtis.
The first theory was that there was some tapping noise somewhere that we could not hear, but the microphones were like picking up through vibrations.
Yep.
Possible. The second theory
chamber door
is that maybe once I get those shock mounts, if that is a thing, maybe the shock mount will do enough to make it not happen. This seltzer is making me super burpy, which is not good for
drink
podcasting.
a ton of it is the thing. You've been gulping seltzer.
Yeah,
I know you got a lot to get through.
This is a good, it's a liter. It's a whole liter of
seltzer. Your tasty honey crisp apple water.
And then when I keep topping it off with the whiskey,
which you've been very sneakily.
I'm not going to drink any for the podcast, but
you just got a bottle of JD up here.
Yeah. We're sponsored.
Tasty honey.
Oh no! You weren't supposed to say that it was honey. People need to think that I drink real whiskey.
Oh,
not the good sweet kind.
I'm sorry. I don't know anything.
Man, no!
I don't know anything about whiskey shame. All right, let's do our precast. Let's do
the precast.
Let's first off, what's next week?
Next week is Son of Frankenstein.
Oh boy.
And Day of the Dead.
Oh boy.
Ben, I'll tell you right now, Son of Frankenstein rules.
Okay. Oh boy.
It's good.
Oh boy.
It's it follows the pattern of
yeah. What if the pattern remains all the way through?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I'm hoping. I guess I haven't seen.
Does day go right into land?
I don't remember. I saw Land once in high school, and I've never seen Diary. And isn't there one more?
Isn't Return of the Living Dead?
I can't remember.
Is that a thing?
And then the Frankenstein titles become so vague that it doesn't matter what order they go in. But Day of the Dead and
I remember being quite fond of Return of the Living Dead.
And Son of Frankenstein follow the Exorcist 3, the Exorcist pattern. Where most people don't really care about the third one, but there's like a weird like minority that think it's like their favorite one.
I'm definitely one of those weird Day of the Dead people.
Yeah. Oh, my brother.
Yeah.
He just really likes Eminem. I don't.
Oh.
I don't have anything against Eminem personally. Please don't diss me, Eminem. Like he would need
release your great Curtis diss track.
Say like you need to. My fucking life is a diss. Anyway, so yeah, I think you're gonna like Son of Frankenstein. I'm very excited to watch Day of the Dead.
So we're just doing the Romero movies, right?
Yep. If only because in Day of the Dead, the one thing I remember 2 bits of information from this movie. And one of them was like a really cool special effect, I think, that I'm really looking forward to seeing again.
Day of the Dead?
Yeah. So.
I really like Return of the Living Dead. I'm just remembering this now.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Who the hell? This number keeps calling me.
Hi, Kurt.
Hello?
Skin.
Hello? Shut the fuck up. I own my car. Who's gonna pay me out? Me? Stupid thing. Anyway, yeah, next week, Son of Frankenstein.
Oh.
And sometime we should just do Return of the Living Dead.
This is weird, though.
What's that?
So John Russo was the screenwriter for Night of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You with me so far?
Yeah. I met him once.
You did?
Yeah.
Was he cool?
I didn't really get a chance to talk. I said hello to him. He was polite, but I didn't really talk to him. I didn't pay. So I didn't pay to have him sign anything.
So he blew you off.
You know what he was selling that was cool though, but I didn't buy any because it was kind of stupid.
What?
For $20 a piece, you could buy a vial. He went to Pennsylvania to the graveyard where they filmed Night of the Living Dead, and he scooped up dirt.
Oh, just dirt.
And you could buy dirt from the Night of the Living Dead graveyard.
That's neat.
It's cool, but it was like $25 or something.
Yeah.
$25. So
it's a little bit too much like a Catholic relic.
And it's
for my taste.
It's a little too much. It's a little too insulting in the fact that it's just dirt. It's literally just dirt, and you're paying $25 for a vial of dirt.
So is the land that you own that your house sits on.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's going to be worth something someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably more than a tablespoon of it, though.
So here's the deal about the Living Dead and the Dead series. John Russo and George Romero disputed about how to handle sequels to Night of the Living Dead because they made it together.
Yep.
They reached a settlement where the Romero sequels would be referred to as the Dead movies, and the Russo sequels would be Living Dead movies. So they could take it in 2 different directions.
Okay.
And be in 2 distinct canons. Russo wrote a horror novel called Return of the Living Dead, and didn't end up being made until the 80s. Eventually, Russo and Dan O'Bannon wrote a new script, also called The Return of the Living Dead. Apparently in Return of the Living Dead, a character says that the George Romero films exist, and they are based on true events, and the Return series are the true events that Night of the Living Dead is based on. And that the George Romero Dead films are based on.
So,
And there's a lot more slapstick humor.
There's another leg,
which is weird because there's a lot of slapstick humor in Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
There's another leg.
Yeah, the zombie series, like Zombi, is an Italian, I believe, European. It says European. Series that starts with Dawn of the Dead,
also released as Zombie.
Yeah,
overseas,
and then they did Zombie 2, Zombie Flesh Eaters.
But those ones are terrible, right?
I've seen Zombie, and it has some cool effects, but it's pretty not awesome.
So there's Zombie, which is Dawn of the Dead, and then there's another movie called Zombie.
Yeah,
that's fucked up.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. What else? Is there anything else about Dawn before we do Bride?
For precast?
Precast.
We have not even talked about Dawn yet.
Okay.
Name the primary characters of Dawn. Franny. Steven.
I always say they're like real names, which is not good.
Steven is the small National Guard guy.
With the blonde hair?
With the blonde hair. Peter is the tall National Guard guy.
Yep.
And then there is also Roger.
Yes. Who is... Yeah, Flyboy is Roger, right?
Nope. No. Roger is the small National Guard guy.
Oh god, I just wrote Flyboy, so I'm not gonna remember. Peter is Ken Foree.
Yep.
I'm not gonna be able to remember their names in the cast.
We'll just call him Flyboy.
Okay.
All right. Flyboy equals Steven.
Yes.
Who is the traffic reporter.
Yep.
Roger is the squirrely little one that gets zombified.
Is that Trooper?
I don't know that they had. I didn't pay attention to the nicknames.
Okay. Roger. Little guy. Zombie. Okay. Gail. No.
Who's Gail?
Is the name of the woman. Francine's name is...
Oh, the actress's name is Gail.
Yeah. God. That's like the worst habit I have.
So yeah, okay, those are the characters. We open with that amazing 15-minute block of just straight violence. Yeah, pretty disturbing stuff, especially for the 70s. Just like an orgy of violence to open your film.
Yeah, I think the scene is called Ghetto Holocaust or something.
Really?
Yeah, if you look at the title, scene selections, I think that scene's called Ghetto Holocaust.
Yeah, it's horrifying. It's maybe the scariest part of this movie. This is not like a scary movie.
Yeah.
Overall, though.
Yeah.
After that, it's mostly kind of an action comedy.
Yeah.
Like a post-apocalyptic action comedy. But yeah, the Ghetto Holocaust is really frightening. Apparently the New York Times reviewer just gave up at that
Maybe
point.
That was the point.
15 minutes into the film, it was I'm done. I don't need to see any of the rest of this.
And the Tom Savini effects are really kind of what I think they really do a lot for that, where the dude's head just fucking explodes.
Yeah.
Not even a trace of his head left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so after that, it's back at
they steal a helicopter.
News station.
They steal a helicopter. They meet up with the two National Guard guys.
Yep.
They fly. They stop at that little spot where there's a pretty tense encounter. I like that scene a lot. The scene where everybody kind of has a little shocky moment.
Yeah.
And we're first exposed to Steven's just absolute kind of incompetence. Never point a gun at somebody. Right? So we have that, and then they go to the mall, and they don't mean to stay at the mall at first, but they go in to get supplies. They do a supply run, and the supply run is successful, but they also seem to have a lot of fun while they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's two boys going out on a hunt, and then Steven wakes up, and he's like, oh man, I wanted to go out on a hunt too. Speaking of hunters, though, there's that great bit with the rednecks.
Yeah.
When they fly over all the, I think it's just a bunch of military people and
that
rednecks.
Was really, that part was really interesting to me, just in general, because it shows... It just shows very clearly how this is being handled in inner cities versus how it is in rural country, and it's like a party. They're like drinking beer and laughing,
Yeah, they're tailgating,
and hanging out. Yeah, and they're like,
duck down, they're behind you.
Yeah, and then in the ghetto, it's just like they're like pushing them into the locked cages in the basement, and a lot of them can't admit that they're not their loved ones anymore, and the lady tries to like grab her husband, and then he bites her neck off.
There also seems to be an element of like the sanctity of the dead.
Yeah. To
it. The rednecks don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They think like, oh, let them fuck them.
Yeah.
But there does seem to be like a religious radical element to the Puerto Ricans, saying that we're still going to try to treat our dead with dignity, even if they are a danger to us. We're going to gather them all in one room and just set them in there.
And they have the priest like read them their last rites and stuff. And
yeah, cool scene with the priest too.
Yeah,
that's an interesting contrast. So then they make it to the mall. The blah blah blah. They end up deciding to stay there, and as part of staying there, they have to blockade it. Is that the?
Yeah, I believe that's.
Is the trucks their first try?
I think the
trucks are their first idea, right?
Yeah, or they realize that they can't get in, but they realize that as the numbers get bigger, they're gonna break through. So I think that's the first idea, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So they go around with the trucks. Roger gets bit. And Francine the whole time is not down with the idea of staying at the mall. She thinks it's stupid and that they're like caught up in the magic of the place.
Yeah.
But they don't realize it's also a prison. The things you own are a prison. Your desire to own things is a prison.
Yeah.
This is pretty standard. This seems like a lot of movies we watch have this basic message. Maybe it's the ultimate message of all art in the 20th and 21st centuries, the time when owning things became one of the primary concerns of humanity. I don't know. It's just an interesting thought. I'm glad George Romero is continuing the theme of Ben and Curt Till It Hurts very effectively. Roger gets bit. They do the cool scene with the car where they have to drive around and like lock all the doors. So, and just something about seeing a car driving around in a mall is really cool and fun.
Yeah, for me, it was like making a comparison to like, because I was watching it with my friends and I was like, wouldn't it be sweet if they started playing the music from the Blues Brothers when they were driving, tearing through the mall in the cop car?
Oh man. There's that great shot, I believe it's in the car scene, that great shot when Roger is getting into the car and the zombie grabs his leg and just like squeezes.
Yeah.
And blood just pools out of it. Yuck. A lot of good yucky kills.
Yeah.
The helicopter blades taking the guy's head off are pretty crazy. The screwdriver in the zombie's head in the hardware section.
Which is pretty funny because I don't have a lot of experience with like malls because we live in Maine, so there aren't really that many. But it was funny how there really is like every store in this gigantic super mall.
Yeah.
Which is probably a pretty accurate, for a. I don't know where this movie takes place.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, same as Night.
But I
filmed at the Monroeville Mall. A mall that my mother has actually visited.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Does it take place there or was it just filmed there?
I don't know where it takes place.
I don't have a clue. But just like I can see when these malls were like conceptualized and created that the idea was like we need everything in these malls and
one-stop shop.
Yeah, and I mean maybe it's an exaggeration where there's like outdoorsman stores or maybe there isn't, but I think it plays towards this like what the movie is trying to do, and it provides like a plausible plot, projection for everything.
If you really wanted to remake Dawn of the Dead today, I think you would have to take place in a Walmart.
Yeah.
Because Walmart has taken that over. Walmart is now the place that has everything. And interestingly, because I think that one of the great reasons why Dawn of the Dead is such a massively superior film to Night of the Living Dead is that the house as a concept, though it is a good representation of like an individual's psychology, it's a good manifestation of the people who live there. if you're not making a movie about the people who live in a house, then it's maybe not a great setting if the setting is all you have.
Yeah.
That's why Texas Chainsaw Massacre works, for instance, because that movie is about the people who live in that house. And that's why it's one of the great house films. Night of the Living Dead is not about the people who live in that house. It's about strangers trying to survive in that house.
Yeah.
But the difference between the house in Night and the mall in Dawn is that the mall serves as a microcosm of the country itself.
Yeah.
It has everything. It is a designed space, for one. So it's almost like an amusement park, but where the amusement is consumption. It's the idea of, like you were saying, that you can go there and you can find whatever you want, bar none. There's nothing that you can't find here. I find that a really appealing idea, and I think that's the reason, but beyond the fact that George Romero had 10 more years of filmmaking experience to use the setting more effectively, I think that's why Night of the Living Dead is a write-off for me. It's an academic curiosity. It's not a movie I'll ever watch again. Dawn of the Dead is one of the great films of the 20th century, certainly one of the great films of the 70s.
And I think that that's one of the things that I felt the same way when I was watching this, because I knew I liked it, and I was just seeing how much it had in common with Night of the Living Dead, but just like better. And then I enjoyed that it does things that Night of the Living Dead tried to do, and kind of the tone of
you can
Dawn
see
of the
what it
Dead.
was trying to do. It was trying to get at like it's almost like a camping movie.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, hey, we're all here together. We got to try to barricade this place. We got to try to make it safe for us to stay here for a little while. But it's on a short time scale. It's just one night.
Yep.
And it's in a subpar location. It's in a location that works well on paper. You know, it's the house. It's where you live. You should be able to imagine yourself in this location. But it just doesn't. It doesn't work that well.
Yeah. I think our first like big B&C till H project is we should co-write a zombie film that takes place in a Walmart. I think that should be our first big move.
Yeah. It would be kind of, well, the thing is, we'd just be retreading Shaun of the Dead, because are you a Shaun of the Dead guy at all?
I haven't seen it in a long time, but I like Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead is the same idea, except that instead of the mall being the microcosm of American culture, the pub is the microcosm of British culture.
Yeah.
So of course all the zombies end up going to the pub because they have that, you know, that instinctive memory. That's just where you go. Whereas sadly in America, where you go is the mall. Now where you go is the Walmart. Yeah. It's like, where do you go to veg out? To the pub if you're British, to Walmart if you're American.
So you know what's actually really interesting about that is that my brother and I, being from where we're from, small town, not a whole lot to do, we actually we have a phrase. Instead of when we're bored, or when we were bored, we'll say, you want to go do a lap? And that meant go to Walmart, just do a lap around the store, look around for a little bit, and then leave.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's.
What do you think? Maybe that should be our big project. Let's do a large-scale history of boredom. Like, where do you?
Fuck that.
How long do you think people have been bored?
I'm sure forever.
You think?
Yeah.
I doubt it, actually.
Yeah?
I kind of doubt it. I think boredom might be a modern condition. I think there's boredom. What is it to be bored? This should go in the podcast, by the way.
This is the podcast. We're a half hour in. So,
what does it mean to be bored?
To lack stimulation.
To lack stimulation. And when did stimulation become a going concern?
Forever. That's why people play, or have played.
People play to learn, and people play to interact with people. But I don't think that you play. I don't think that the stimulus is I'm bored, and then the reaction is I need to play. I think the stimulus is there are people around me. We all have different things we're doing. Let's do something together.
But I don't think that. I think you learn from playing, but I don't think the reason you do it is to learn.
I want to know what the first documented case of boredom is. All right, I want to dig back. I want to go back into the records. You know what doesn't appear in the Bible? Boredom.
Yeah.
There was something interesting I was listening to this morning. I was listening to not a sermon, but like a teaching, like a lecture by a great Christian apologist called R.C. Sproul. And something he was talking about was that that to have an encounter with God is the opposite of boredom. So what is boredom then? Separation from God.
I'm not saying that seeing God is boring.
I know. But if we're going to engage in a systematic examination of the phenomenon of boredom,
then I think it's definition important. Won't work.
Then I think it's important to establish what is not boring.
Stimulation.
What kind of stimulation? But here's the thing, though. A video game is very stimulating, but video games are fucking boring. They trick you into thinking they're not, but they are.
That if you're bored playing a video game, you're no longer stimulated by it.
Then what is stimulation?
Okay, we can get into that. But you can definitely, just because if you play a video game and you're bored, that the video game is just not stimulating.
So you're saying that it's like porn. It's like you got to get different stimulation to keep yourself stimulated.
I guess.
Yeah, that's not the way I operate. I don't think. I think that to feel bored is to feel that there is a lack of meaning in what you are doing. Is to feel that you are not doing something meaningful, and the opposite of boredom is to do something meaningful. And I do think that we all have a sense of meaning. I do think we all have a sense of what is meaningful, and what we derive that sense of meaning from is that if you're doing something that is the correct thing for you to be doing at any moment, then it will feel meaningful. Have you ever had that? Have you had a sense of meaning? Like when you're doing something and you just think like, this is absolutely the right thing for me to be doing right now. This feels right.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of like, so when you first watched Eraserhead, you watched it like 8 times. Why did you do that? Why did that remain stimulating, quote unquote stimulating? I would use the term meaningful, but why did that remain stimulating for you through so many reviewings?
Because it's a film that lets you, it has enough strange things going on in it that watching it, you're not just taking it. We've said how this is a movie full of symbols, so that you're not just watching it and saying like, this is happening and then this is happening. You're saying, why is this happening? What does it mean that because this happens? So that's why that movie is so watchable for me, is because if you assume each symbol in that film has an intent purpose, which I think it does, and nothing in that movie, as I'm sure our friend the Thriller would disagree with, I don't think anything in that film is random. I think everything has a meaning in that film. So I get enjoyment watching it, trying to say, I know that I believe this has a meaning to it. Why did David Lynch put this here?
Are you familiar with the term zone of proximal development?
No.
It's the idea, I learned this at our college in my teacher education program. The zone of proximal development is when you are doing something that is just outside your level of ability, but you're able to you're able to stretch yourself and get up into that zone. And that's how you actually grow, by growing into your zone of proximal development. So you're always kind of chasing your zone of proximal development. It always eludes you because it's always running away from you. So what I would argue is that the reason, at least I know for sure that the reason I found Eraserhead meaningful was because it was just outside of my level of comprehensibility. I think what makes it a generally successful film is that it's constructed in such a way that it is perfectly outside of many people's zone of proximal development, or it's right within people's zone of proximal development. It's just outside of your comfort zone. That's generally what you want to be doing, is staying in your zone of proximal development when you're interacting with media.
Okay.
So that's what I think the opposite of boredom is. If to use a secular definition, separate from the theological definition that I was referring to a little bit ago. So if we were to talk about boredom as a phenomenon, I think we'd also have to talk about meaning, and I think we'd also have to talk about the zone of proximal development. Why are people so bored these days? Are people, well, maybe, we could say it differently. I'm making the argument that people have not always been bored, at least not in the way that they are today. But we could, if we are to argue that boredom is a universal concept that has always existed for people, then could we say that people are more bored today than they have been in the past? Are people bored listening to this right now?
No, because no one's listening to this.
Yeah,
so I think people are probably are more bored today than they ever have been, but that's probably more related to the fact that things that did not used to be boring are now boring, and for a lot of people. Providing food for yourself used to be a more challenging. It was something you had to accomplish. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm bored and I become hungry, I walk to my fridge and I grab some carrot sticks that were just there and I eat them.
They just appeared there magically.
It doesn't create any stimulation that helps alleviate boredom. So I think that when you had to do things like hunt to eat, or construct your own shelter for survival, or keep a fire going, or any of those things, I think that helped keep boredom at bay. But I still think boredom has to have existed because things like fictional stories exist, and things like
but that's not just entertainment. Fictional stories aren't just entertainment. Those are deeply meaningful things that you interact with.
They can be meaningful, but I think that they
are meaningful first and
Sure.
entertainment second. They are only entertainment because they are meaningful. They are not meaningful because they are entertainment.
But I think that they come...
We're a real yin and yang situation here,
I think
Curtis.
they come from a place of boredom. I think that's... Or when you create... you look at old ancient civilizations that created toys. Like, it's something to...
Yeah, they were for children.
Yeah. But to stimulate them.
Not because their children were bored. It's because their children... I don't know, actually. I don't know why they invented toys. Maybe it was because their children were bored. That's an interesting idea.
To stimulate a young mind. And maybe it teaches them to learn, but they're not playing with a toy or listening to a story because they... I don't think you're playing with that toy or listening to this story because this is gonna provide meaning for me. I don't think you can care about that when you're a child. I think you just want some stimulation because you're bored.
Well, you don't care about it consciously. But okay, let's. I want to get off this subject so that we can get to the end of the section that you must cut out of this podcast.
I don't even know what the hell I'm going to do with this podcast. This podcast is fucking.
We haven't started the podcast yet. Last thing I want to say about this is that the fundamental difference between our positions is that you seem to see boredom as the natural human condition, and stimuli are things that you apply to alleviate that natural condition of boredom.
No.
Whereas that's what the words you're saying have implied to me.
What I'm trying to say is that the natural cause for humanity is to seek stimulation, and when you can't find that stimulation, you move towards an idea that is boredom. So when I think that people are more bored now, but I think there has always been boredom, but I don't think boredom is the natural state. I think the natural state is survival. So it is seeking stimulation because you need to stay warm and stay dry and stay full.
But how does stimulation get you those things? Just random stimulation. We live in a more stimulated age than ever. Anyway, let's get out of it. Yes, absolutely. I think that we live in the most stimulated age of all time. Look around you, Curtis.
Yeah,
Look at all these stimuli.
Sure.
Anyway, this has been a mistake. So what else happens in Dawn of the Dead?
Christ. So, raiders come. And
the bikers.
The bikers come, yeah. They're raiders. I can play Fallout or I can not play Fallout. They're raiders. They have leather jackets and...
Yeah, they've got leather armor on. Full set.
Yeah, the full set.
Yep, they've got weird hair.
Yep. Which is... Yeah. So they come... They chase the people out of the mall and then they fly away.
Well, they first Peter and Steven are gonna be like all sneaky.
Yeah,
they've got walkie-talkies,
right? And
Peter's trying to tell Steven like, "Hey, be cool," but Steven is like, "No, I'm not gonna be cool. I'm gonna go shoot him."
Yep.
I don't know if we should save this for the podcast, but I think that reveals something about Steven's character, which is that he has fallen too in love with the mall. He has always loved the mall too much.
Yeah.
He has not seen the mall as it is, which is like, well, in the post-apocalyptic world, the mall has lost its meaning.
Yeah.
It's not what it used to be, but Steven seems to want it to be the place of stability that it once promised. But the Raiders show that it can't possibly be that anymore. So instead of being like Peter and saying like, "Look, we'll just hide, all right,"
yeah,
and then as soon as they're gone, we'll get out of here.
Yeah.
Steven wants to defend the place of stability that he believes the mall is, and it is ultimately his downfall.
And I think Steven is I think an argument could be made that he is a selfish character anyway, because even from the beginning he has this helicopter. He wants the people that he chooses to be able to leave with him. And even when Francine doesn't want to leave, he says, "I'm coming at 9, don't make me come look for you." And then her coworker's like, "You might as well, like,
whatever, we're gonna be off the air soon."
Like,
yeah.
And then he is selfish about teaching anyone else to fly the helicopter. I think you're right in that he cares about the mall too much, but I think that it fits in. It isn't a huge arc that he goes through. It just becomes one more thing that he selfishly wants for himself. Which it says so much about, we've created this place that is just the biggest pile of stuff that it has everything you could ever want, and you can fill it with people, and all those people can have those things, and he doesn't want anyone else to have those things. So I think that's pretty much what I took from that.
And what do you think about the ending?
I'm really like, I read about the original ending, not even
so everyone dies, right?
Yeah. And Francine does the helicopter thing. Like, that idea was that was how she was supposed to die.
That's crazy.
That was her. She was supposed to stand up and let the thing whack her head off.
Wow.
And then they decided not to do that, so they just used it on a zombie. And then I think Ken does shoot himself in the original. In that moment when he thinks about, So, I don't know. I was wondering how I felt about that, because it fits in with the sad ending that, like, Night of the Living Dead had, but I don't know. It's hard to tell, like, with George Romero, like, are you trying to have, like, I know he thinks there's a significant thing with the mall, and they come to the mall because that's all they remember. But I go back and forth on his movies so far with this, like, are you trying to have a message here, or is this just like a thing that happened?
Well, I mean, Dawn of the Dead has a message.
No, I know, but
and whether or not he's trying, like,
yeah. And I mean, that's kind of like what we talked about, like, with the main protagonist being black in the first one, where we were just like, he has openly said he didn't mean to make a message by that, and, you know, we were saying how it doesn't change anything. I don't know if we said it didn't change anything in the movie, but it makes a message, whether he intended for it to or not. And that's kind of what I think about this. I'm like, is this an intentional choice that you're making a statement about, or was this just a thing that you did not intentionally create this message?
Well, I mean, Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead, that's another way in which they contrast. But because Night of the Living Dead is a movie constructed without a message, without a racial message.
Yeah.
And with a kind of a weak message overall, in my opinion. Whereas Dawn of the Dead is suffused by its message. Its anti-consumerist, anti-materialist message. It uses as a metaphor for consumerism. I think that he intended it as well.
Yeah. So with his original ending, what do you think the point of that was?
It's bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just bleak. Kind of like Night of the Living Dead.
With the second ending, do you think they just changed it to be positive, or do you think he is trying to push the image that you can get above in a way?
From what I read, he said that he just changed the ending because he liked the characters.
Yeah.
And he didn't want them to die. I think that's a valid reason to change an ending. I think it does weaken the movie a little bit. I don't know if I would have... This is a hard movie to end. Yeah. You know? I don't know how I would have ended it had I been the writer of Dawn of the Dead. I don't really love how it ends right now.
Yeah.
I think the way it ends works really well for it as like a hangout movie where you get to know these characters. Because they're the two, Fran and Peter are the two most likable characters.
It's a weird problem with zombie movies, is that kind of always has to be what happens. The main goal in any zombie scenario is keep the zombies out, keep us alive. And if you succeed in that, there's no movie, because then you're like, hooray, we did it. Like, we boarded off the mall, now we get to live in this super sweet mall, and whatever.
It's a prison.
Yeah. So
it's not sweet.
I mean, they have a pretty good time.
Yeah, sure they do. They live a hedonistic lifestyle until one of them has a mental breakdown,
well,
and then they get attacked by raiders.
In the movie,
they're trapped. They are mentally and physically trapped in the mall.
But that's what happens in every one of these movies. You can't succeed at surviving the zombies because you don't have a movie. There has to be the conflict that if you create something to any level of comfort, it has to be shattered.
That's just true also.
Yeah.
Like that's just the reality of the world. You can create the most comfortable life that you want, but then something is going to come along. There's always a snake in the garden, right? Death, disease, and poverty will always come and get you eventually.
So, I don't know. I will wonder about that type of stuff, where it's just kind of like, it's interesting because his movies end up having these messages, I guess, and to some degree, I wonder if they're intentional or not. It's weird when you...
I think it's definitely intentional in the case of Dawn of the Dead.
Okay.
Yeah. What were you saying?
It's different with... One thing that's interesting about this series is that with other movies we've discussed or series we've done, there has been like a clear, like, either a thesis for us, or like, even you might not understand it, but you feel like David Lynch had an idea, and there's a reason he did every little thing. And then it's a little weird because with these movies, you know, like with Frankenstein, there was kind of this, like, I mean, they kind of touch on the fact that it's like a moral quandary to bring things back from the dead, but they don't really like drive it home. And then on these movies, you're like, yeah, I mean, did you mean to do that, Romero? Or like, to what level did you inject this message in? Or is it just like an observation? Are you trying to make a huge statement? Or are you just making an observation?
I absolutely think he's making a huge statement about consumer culture.
Okay.
I don't think that there's a coherent reading of this movie that denies that. And in the case of Frankenstein, I think that there is a coherent message, but it's not the overt message. I think it's a subtler message about obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is one of the messages of the novel Frankenstein anyway. So it is kind of getting at the source material just at an odd angle. And then Bride of Frankenstein is totally bananas. So you think the message of Dawn of the Dead is ambiguous?
I think George Romero intentionally made those choices about malls being bad. But is it like, I guess
it's not just that it's bad. He is very specific about why it's bad.
Okay.
It's a place of consumption. It's a man-made garden of hedonism. Yeah, you try to fill that hole inside yourself by consuming, but you can never fill it.
See, and that's where I get torn, because I don't... What overtly happens in that movie that says that, and not just that it's a thing that happens?
Zombies wander the halls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I think...
They return there because of the good feelings that they felt while they were there in their life. but they're not there for any purpose. They're not there for any reason.
Right. So yeah. I think that interpretation is a little bit of you putting it on it. I think that he makes a message about malls, being bad, and they come here because that's just what they did. I don't know. Maybe I just don't read into it as much, I guess. I never associated it with they came here because it gives them the feel good, so that's where they did when they were alive. It was always much more of a ambiguous, like that's just what they did, so they just continue to do it.
It was a habit. It was a habit that they continue doing, but why was it a habit in the first place?
And that's what I think is, I don't think that the movie really cares about that. I think that the evil of consumerism to us, I don't think Romero pounds that. I think it's just kind of there.
I don't think that it's relevant to the ending. Like I said, I don't know how I would end this movie. It's a really tough movie to end, to like drive home the thematic point.
And I mean, and that's kind of where I was trying to like get my brain, is just like when you have directors like, David Lynch, that have like, it feels like he's saying something and it has a purpose. It feels like George Romero does, but like he's not.
What about like Steven's line about all the great stuff? You got to see all these things, Franny. Check out the things we found. Look at this great stuff. We found all these great things. And then Francine has the line about how it's a prison.
Sure.
Do you not think that that's the voice of the director?
No, I mean that line wasn't really like at the front of my brain. So like that is a good point, like about making it like that.
Yeah, I think Francine is supposed to be the moral center of the movie in that moment. Like the boys are all obsessed with the fun that they're having at the mall, and Francine is saying like, don't lose sight of the fact that this space is not what you think it is. Yeah, this thing that you think is your salvation is actually going to come to be your destruction ultimately, and it is. Yeah, maybe that's what it should have been. Maybe Francine should have flown away alone at the end of the film. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Ken is, I can see both sides to that too, though, because as you pointed out, like Ken is likable, and I think he does have the more practical head, more than the other guys.
Peter?
Yeah.
Ken Foree.
Yeah, Ken Foree. Peter Washington. Yeah. He, first president, first person in this new world. I don't know.
Was it intentional?
Was it intentional, George? I don't know.
Did you just pick the name out of a hat? I don't know.
Did you consciously choose that, or did it
just feel right? Okay, let's save some for the...
I don't know if this is the podcast, man. I don't know what to do.
Makes it really confusing.
We've been talking for 45 minutes.
You're going to have to edit this. You're going to have to cut this together. Maybe this is for Jen and Bert to do. I don't know.
This is going to be a big one if I have to, like...
We need to cut all that boredom stuff out.
Okay.
All right, that can't be in. The podcast definitely started after that. I don't know when it started, but it definitely
we
wasn't.
We haven't even like introed
that.
Or caught up with each other.
Let's make sure we know the basics about Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh my God! Colin
Clive once again plays Dr. Frankenstein.
Yes.
Dr. Henry Frankenstein.
Yes.
Victor? No, Henry.
It's Henry.
Yeah, Henry.
So, but Henry I found it out, is the name of his best friend in the book.
Yeah, and Victor is the name of the doctor.
In the book. So I don't know why they swapped
shit
it
to me. Yeah, I don't know. What's the woman who plays Mary Shelley?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't write that one down. I just wrote. It's Elsa Lanchester.
Elsa Lanchester, who also plays the bride.
Also plays the bride. Yeah, that's why I didn't write it down.
Well, there you go.
Her last name rhymes with my last name.
Don't tell. Definitely can't be in the podcast. Ernest Thesiger plays Dr. Pretorius.
Dr. Pretorius.
He's very good. Very good character.
And then Colin Clive, Boris Karloff plays the monster. Those are the four main. I mean, you have...
Except for the blind hermit.
The blind hermit. And
who is played by O.P. Heggie.
and Una O'Connor
as Minnie.
As Minnie.
Two great side characters.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think that about covers everything I'm going to want to talk about in this movie.
Okay. Should we do the intro?
Let's get into this podcast.
Okay, let me hopefully the music will work. It won't, so
No,
whatever. Oh, so anyway. Is this it? Where is it? There it is.
Where did my music go?
I don't think it's working.
I'm not getting it in my headphones.
Come on. Alright, so I'm going to stop this. I'm going to save this as pre-show.
Beetle. Sorry about all that boredom stuff.
That's okay.
I don't know what to... I had to get that out of my system.
Sometimes this podcast takes you places.
Sometimes I've got something evil inside of me.
Can I ask you a question while I'm setting this up?
Yeah, sure.
This was a conversation I got into on Reddit, and I was very concerned by this person's answer.
Yeah.
What's worse? If you were to find yourself living in a Matrix type scenario or a Terminator scenario?
So wait, like you're in the Matrix?
You're living in the Matrix.
Or you're in the future of the Terminator.
In the future, in the Robot Wars.
So, and I only know I'm in the Matrix if someone tells me. So is that part of the scenario as well?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Either way, does it affect your answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So yeah, okay.
Living blindly in the Matrix, I think, is better than being in the Robot Wars. Yeah, actually, I think the Robot Wars is probably bad. It's probably worse all around. Things were pretty bleak. There wasn't really there is kind of a savior, like Kyle. Kyle, what's his face?
Kyle,
Chandler.
Well, no, it's Kyle Reese.
Kyle Chandler's the dad on Friday Night Lights.
God damn it, Ben. No, John Connor.
Is the savior.
Yeah. See, and I hadn't really considered that part of it, but to me...
John Connor, JC, Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
The Matrix, no matter how you cut it, is ultimately worse, infinitely worse. Because when I think about living in the Matrix, whether I'm aware of it or not, I just have this, like, existential dread about, like...
Curtis.
Being a battery.
Yeah. And
nothing being real.
Yeah.
A robot uprising / human war is very real, and like I think I would rather die or survive in that scenario than be in a Matrix. You know what I mean?
You are in a Matrix, Curtis.
So if I were to find out I was really in a Matrix,
you really actually are.
I would prefer to say, you know what? I wish Terminator were real, and I could just.
So what you're saying is that you're scared of living a meaningless life, which is what the Matrix is. It's the okay.
If I'm looking at this in a literal. It's not meaning that I care so much about. It's being in a pond.
You know that feeling of existential dread that you're describing?
Yes.
That's you experiencing the meaning of the Matrix. You're experiencing it viscerally. That's how it's meant to be experienced. And that sense that to be part of a war where you might die or you might live, but at least your actions have consequences and you're not just a battery, that is to live a meaningful life, a life of consequence and a life of moral weight.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I'm
saying that each option is the option that you're describing, but it is also what it represents. It's both things at once. So what don't you agree about?
That I don't care so much that I guess it's just not so much that it's meaningful or that there are consequences. It's just that knowing that it's real is what.
Yes, reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Reality is consequence.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like a life of meaning that I search for.
What do you think a life of meaning means?
The feeling that you have a purpose. I don't... That there's something you should be doing, or that there's a purpose to it.
For me, there's no real distinction between something being real and something being purposeful.
Okay.
So I guess maybe there's like a conflict of terminology that we're running into here. But so it's just the very fact of its reality or unreality that gives you the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I think... Yes, it's working.
How do you resolve that?
I mean, hopefully I'm not living in the Matrix. So.
You are living in the Matrix.
No, so I mean, I guess there is no resolve. If I had to pick a fictional world to live in, I would choose Terminator.
I'm not thinking of them as fictional worlds, Curtis. I'm thinking of them as very real. They're both representative of our world. They both represent different options that you can exist in.
Yeah. I'm looking at literal meaning. I don't care about. I'm looking at would I rather be aware that nothing is real, or would I rather get shot in the head by a Terminator laser gun? I'd rather get shot in the head by a Terminator laser gun. That's all.
You know I can't experience things like that, Curtis. You know I'm physically incapable. It's a defect. I was born this way.
I was born this way. But that also adds that level. I'm going to do this quickly because we are fucked on time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not for me. I don't give a shit. But
I'm going to go patch walls up after this, so I kind of got enough time.
I actually no. I guess not. I guess it doesn't matter, because I was going to say. I mean, they both have a Christ. You know. So I was going to say I hadn't even considered the fact that John Connor is the savior. So like there's hope there, because there has been, you know, Neo is the savior there too. So
yeah,
those kind of cancel each other out.
Yeah.
So there's always a light.
There's always something you can look to if you choose to.
JC's always knocking.
JC's always there for you. You just got to accept his offer of grace.
Knock, knock, knocking on my microphone.
Yep. Hey, buddy.
Still here.
Still here.
You can ignore me, but...
hear me? You can ignore me, but I'm always there for you.
I'm always there. I saw what you did.
Always watching. I saw what you did, and you know what? I forgive you.
You have to own it, though.
Even though it hurt me, I forgive you.
I was at... Oh, I can't. No more stories.
No, tell me. I'm in it. I'm into it. No, wait, can this be part of the podcast, or does
this is totally irrelevant.
All right.
I was at a fair.
Okay, I mean, can it be part of the beginning of the podcast, getting us into it? Check-ins.
I don't know.
You don't want this to be heard.
Maybe you can make a connection about...
You were at a fair.
I was at a fair. Tell me what this means about me.
Okay.